The council chamber on Sanctuary Prime had never been so quiet. Representatives from 47 different species sat in their assigned seats, their various forms of breathing creating a strange symphony of sounds. Some had gills that pulsed, others had multiple lungs. A few didn't breathe at all. But today, all of them sat in silence as they watched the holographic display at the center of the massive room. The predecessor stood before them, his ancient body barely holding together. His species had walked the galaxy for over 1,000,000 years, watching civilizations rise and fall like waves on a shore. They had seen everything. They had warned the galaxy about threats before, and they had always been right. But today, the council members looked uncomfortable. They shifted in their seats. They whispered to each other through their translation devices. "You must listen," the predecessor said, his voice crackling with age. "We have been watching a species in the outer arm. On a planet they call Earth, these beings, these humans. They are different from anything we have encountered." The holographic display changed. It showed a blue and green planet, small and unremarkable, spinning slowly in the darkness of space. Councillor Vex of the Korthax Dominion leaned forward, his scaled face twisted in what might have been amusement. "That primitive world?" Vex said, his voice like grinding stones. "We know of it. They barely have spaceflight. They fight each other with chemical explosives. Why should we care?" The predecessor touched a control and the hologram shifted. Images began to play. Humans fighting in terrible wars, cities burning, weapons that could destroy entire populations being used. The council watched as humans killed each other by the millions over and over throughout their history. "See," Vex said, "primitive and violent. If they ever leave their planet, we will crush them as we have crushed every other warlike species that threatened the peace." But the predecessor was not finished. The images changed again. Now they showed humans rebuilding after their wars. They showed humans creating art and music. They showed humans sending machines to other planets in their system, taking their first careful steps into space. They showed humans saving animals from extinction, even animals that served no purpose for them. "You do not understand," the predecessor said. "Watch more carefully." The hologram showed a human city that had been destroyed by a natural disaster. Within days, humans from across their entire planet arrived to help. They pulled survivors from collapsed buildings. They gave food and shelter to strangers. They worked until they collapsed from exhaustion, then got up and worked more. Another image appeared. A human spacecraft had failed and the crew was going to die. The images showed the crew's last messages to their families. They were not angry. They were not begging for their lives. They were telling their loved ones that the mission was worth it, that others would continue, that giving up was not an option. "Every species reaches for the stars," Counselor Zara of the Lirani said, her crystalline voice chiming softly. "What makes these humans special?" The predecessor's eyes, old beyond measure, looked at each council member in turn. "They advance faster than any species we have ever recorded. What takes other species 10,000 years, they accomplish in 1,000. What takes other species 1,000 years, they accomplish in 100, and they never stop. Even when they fail, even when they die, they never stop trying." He pulled up more data. Charts and graphs filled the air, showing humanity's technological progress over just the last few centuries. The lines on the graphs went up at angles that should have been impossible. "But there is something more dangerous than their innovation," the predecessor continued. "They bond with anything. They make companions of other species on their planet, animals that they call pets. They create emotional connections to plants, to places, to ideas, and when something threatens what they have bonded with, they become unstoppable." The hologram showed a human settlement being attacked by a predatory animal. A single human, barely armed, fought the creature to protect children that were not even his own. The human died, but the children lived. "They are also unpredictable," the predecessor said. "Every other species follows patterns. You can predict what a Korthax will do because honor demands certain responses. You can predict what a Lirani will do because logic demands certain choices. But humans, they make decisions based on emotion, on intuition, on concepts they call hope and faith. They change their minds. They break their own rules when they think the situation requires it." Counselor Vex stood up, his massive form towering over his seat. "Then they are unstable. Dangerous, yes, but also weak. A species that cannot follow its own rules will tear itself apart. We have seen it before." "No," the predecessor said firmly. That is exactly what makes them so dangerous. They do not tear themselves apart. They argue, they fight, they disagree violently with each other, but then they come together when threatened from outside. And they remember. They hold grudges for generations. If you harm them, they will come for you. If you harm someone they care about, they will come for you. And they will not stop until they have satisfaction. The council chamber filled with noise as representatives began talking to each other. Some laughed at the warning. Others looked concerned. A few began calling up their own data on this Earth planet, wanting to see for themselves. The predecessor raised his hand for silence. "We are dying," he said simply. "My species will be gone within a generation. But before we go, we wanted to warn you one last time. We have watched these humans carefully. We have studied them. We have run simulations. In every scenario where humans develop faster than light travel and encounter other species, the galaxy changes. Sometimes for the better, sometimes for the worse, but it always changes. They are a force of nature and they are coming. How long?" asked Counselor Maya of the Peaceful Confederacy, her voice filled with genuine worry. The predecessor consulted his data. "At their current rate of advancement, perhaps 500 of your standard years. Perhaps less if they are motivated. Perhaps more if they destroy themselves first, though we calculate only a 17% chance of self-destruction." Vex laughed, a harsh sound like rocks breaking. 500 years? Predecessor, with respect, in 500 years we will have expanded our territory 3 times over. If these humans appear, they will find the Korthax Dominion waiting. They will learn to bow or they will learn to die. Other council members nodded. 500 years was a long time. Humans were far away. They were primitive. Even if everything the predecessor said was true, surely the established powers of the galaxy could handle one small species from the outer rim. The predecessor looked at them all, and for a moment something like pity crossed his ancient face. "Then we have done what we can," he said. "We have delivered our warning. When the humans come, and I promise you they will come, remember this day. Remember that we told you what they are. Remember that we explained why they are dangerous. And when you are dealing with them, remember the most important thing we learned in all our years of watching them." "What is that?" Zara asked. The predecessor began to fade, his holographic projection breaking apart as his ship prepared to leave. His last words echoed through the chamber. "Humans do not think like you. They do not believe the same things you believe. But most importantly, they do not accept the word impossible. Where every other species sees a wall, humans see a challenge. Where every other species accepts defeat, humans look for another option. You cannot intimidate them into surrender. You cannot logic them into submission. And if you make them angry, if you hurt them or hurt those they care about, they will show you what it means to face a species that evolved, fighting everything on their planet, including themselves." The hologram went dark. The predecessor's ship left the system, heading back to their dying worlds. The council sat in silence for a moment. Then Counselor Vex stood again. "I move that we file this warning in the archives and continue with our regular business," he said. "If these humans appear in 500 years, we will deal with them then." The vote was unanimous. The warning was filed. The council moved on to other matters, and in a deep storage facility on Sanctuary Prime, an artificial intelligence marked the file with a special tag, one that would trigger if anyone ever mentioned the word humans in an official report. But the AI was old, and the bureaucracy was complex, and everyone forgot about the warning from the predecessors. After all, 500 years was a very long time, and Earth was very far away. The galaxy went about its business, never knowing that the countdown had already begun. Captain Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the colony ship Odyssey, watching the stars streak past through the viewing screen. Behind her, 3,000 colonists slept in suspended animation, dreaming of the new world they would call home. The ship was humanity's first attempt at a permanent settlement beyond their own solar system. It had taken them 470 years since the predecessor's warning, but humans had finally developed faster than light travel. Sarah was proud. She was scared. She was excited. Her crew had trained for 10 years for this mission. They knew everything that could go wrong, and they had backup plans for the backup plans. That was the human way. Plan for the worst, hope for the best, and never give up. The navigation officer, Marcus Liu, looked up from his console with a frown. "Captain, we have a problem. There's a ship approaching. Big one. Military configuration. Sarah felt her heart speed up, but she kept her voice calm. Red alert. Wake up the senior staff. Marcus, can you identify them? Working on it, Marcus said, his fingers flying across the controls. They're broadcasting something. Translating now. They call themselves the Korthax Dominion. They're ordering us to stop and prepare to be boarded. Sarah had read everything humanity had managed to learn about alien species in the 2 years since they had first detected alien signals. The Korthax were bad news, warriors, conquerors. They believed strength was everything and showed mercy to no one. Send a response, Sarah said. Tell them we're a peaceful colony ship. Tell them we didn't know this was their territory. Ask for permission to pass through or to find an alternate route. Marcus sent the message. The response came back in less than a minute. They say all space belongs to the strong, Marcus reported, his face pale. They say we are weak. They say we will submit or be destroyed. Sarah looked at her senior staff as they arrived on the bridge. They all knew what this meant. First contact with aliens, and it was going to be a fight. She thought about the 3,000 sleeping colonists below. Families, children, scientists and teachers and farmers who just wanted a chance at a new life. Evasive maneuvers, she ordered. Full power to the engines. Maybe we can outrun them. The Odyssey lurched forward, but the Korthax ship was faster. It fired a weapon that struck their engines, not destroying them, but crippling them. The colony ship went dead in space. They're docking with us, Marcus said. Captain, what do we do? Sarah made a decision. Get everyone out of suspended animation. Now. I don't care if it's dangerous. Wake them all up, then get every piece of equipment that can be used as a weapon. Tools, welding torches, anything. If they want to take this ship, we're going to make them pay for it. The docking clamps connected with a metal clang that echoed through the ship. Sarah and her crew waited near the airlock, holding improvised weapons. Behind them, colonists were waking up, confused and frightened, but getting ready to fight. The airlock opened. Korthax warriors poured in, huge and covered in scales like armor. They carried weapons that crackled with energy. Their leader stepped forward, looking at the humans with something like contempt in his yellow eyes. I am Commander Vex Kor of the Korthax Dominion, he said through a translation device. You are now property of the Dominion. You will work in our mines until you die. Your ship and everything on it belongs to us. Do not resist, and your deaths will be quick when you are no longer useful. Sarah stepped forward. She was small compared to the Korthax, barely reaching his chest, but she stood straight and looked him in the eye. I am Captain Sarah Chen of Earth, she said. These are my people. This is our ship, and we don't belong to anyone. Vex Kor laughed, a sound like thunder. Your people? Look at them, weak, soft, you have no claws. No natural armor. No weapons that can hurt us. You are prey trying to act like predators. We're human, Sarah said. That means we don't quit. Ever. She pressed a button on the device in her hand. Throughout the ship, alarms began to sound. The Korthax warriors looked around, confused. Sarah smiled, and it was not a nice smile. That's the self-destruct alarm, she said. In 60 seconds, this ship is going to explode with enough force to take your ship with it. You can leave now, or you can die with us. Vex Kor's eyes widened. You're bluffing. You would not destroy your own people. We're dead anyway, Sarah said. You said so yourself. Either we die as slaves in your mines, or we die right here taking you with us. Seems like an easy choice to me. For the first time, Vex Kor looked uncertain. He had conquered dozens of species, and they had all begged for mercy. They had all submitted. None of them had ever been willing to die just to hurt him. 45 seconds, Sarah said calmly. Vex Kor snarled and grabbed Sarah by the throat, lifting her off the ground. Cancel it. Cancel the destruct sequence. Sarah couldn't breathe, but she managed to choke out words. Can't. Only I know the code. Kill me, and nobody can stop it. 30 seconds, Marcus called out, his voice shaking but determined. The other humans rushed forward with their improvised weapons. They couldn't hurt the Korthax warriors much, but they attacked anyway. Some died, some were thrown aside, but they kept coming, kept fighting, kept buying time. Vex Kor threw Sarah to the ground and ran for his ship, his warriors following. The docking clamps released. The Korthax ship pulled away just as the Odyssey exploded in a ball of fire that lit up the darkness of space. On his ship, Vex Kor watched the debris scatter. He was angry but also confused. He had lost 3 warriors in the brief fight, and he had gained nothing. The humans had chosen death over slavery. It made no sense. Should we report this, Commander? His second-in-command asked. Vex Kor thought about it. He had just lost to a species that had no right to resist him. A primitive species with no real weapons. If he reported this, he would look weak. Better to say nothing. Better to pretend it never happened. No, he said. The ship was empty. A malfunction. We destroyed it. That is all. But as he gave the order, he did not see the small probe that had launched from the Odyssey before it exploded. The probe was running silent, its FTL drive charging, and inside it was a message recorded by Captain Sarah Chen, her face bloody but her voice steady. "This is Captain Sarah Chen of the colony ship Odyssey," she said in the recording. "We have encountered an alien species that calls itself the Korthax Dominion. They attacked us without provocation. They tried to enslave us. We fought back. We're going to die here, but we wanted Earth to know. We wanted everyone to know. Don't trust the Korthax. Don't try to negotiate with them. And don't let them get away with this. We're gone, but make them remember us. Make them pay for what they did." The probe finished charging and jumped to FTL, racing toward Earth with its message. It would take months to get there, but it would get there, and Earth would know what happened to the Odyssey. On Sanctuary Prime, deep in the archives, an old AI detected a report from the Korthax Dominion. The report mentioned destroying a ship from a species that called themselves humans. The AI's ancient programming triggered an alert. It pulled up the predecessor's warning from 500 years ago. The AI tried to forward the alert to the Council, but it had to go through official channels. Forms had to be filed. Bureaucrats had to review it. By the time anyone human might have seen the connection, the report was buried under 10,000 other reports. The alert sat in a queue waiting for someone to notice it, but nobody did. VexCorp continued his patrol of the border territories, thinking about the strange humans who chose death over slavery. It bothered him more than he wanted to admit. In his long career, he had broken the spirits of countless species, but those humans had looked him in the eye, knowing they would die, and they had smiled. He told himself it did not matter. They were dead. Their ship was destroyed. There would be no consequences. He was wrong. 6 months later, the probe reached Earth. 6 months after that, the response began. And VexCorp would learn what it meant to make humans angry. Commander VexCorp was reviewing reports in his office when the first attack happened. One moment, his forward base on Korthax Station 7 was sending routine status updates. The next moment, it went silent. Just gone, no distress call. No warning, nothing. He sent a ship to investigate. What they found made no sense. The station was intact, but every Korthax warrior on it was dead. The computers had been hacked and emptied of all data. And on every wall, someone had painted the same message in Korthax script. Remember the Odyssey. VexCorp felt something he had not felt in decades. Fear. He knew that word. Odyssey. That was the name of the human ship he had destroyed 18 months ago. But that was impossible. All the humans had died. He had watched their ship explode. The attacks continued. Over the next week, 12 Korthax military outposts went dark. Always the same pattern. No warning. Clean kills. Data stolen. And always that message. Remember the Odyssey. The Korthax Dominion called an emergency meeting. VexCorp was forced to admit what he had done, that he had encountered humans and destroyed them. The High Command was furious, not because he had killed humans, but because he had not reported it properly. Now they were under attack and had no idea what they were facing. How many ships did these humans have? The Grand Commander demanded. 1, VexCorp admitted. A colony ship. No weapons. They should not have been able to do this. But they were doing it. And it was not just the attacks that frightened the Korthax. It was how the humans fought. They did not challenge the Korthax to honorable combat. They did not announce their presence. They struck from the shadows and disappeared. They used tricks and deception. They fought without honor, and the Korthax did not know how to respond. Then came the broadcast. Every Korthax communication system on every world suddenly showed the same image. It was the recording from the Odyssey. The galaxy watched as Captain Sarah Chen explained what happened. They saw VexCorp demand slavery. They saw the humans choose death instead. They saw the explosion. After the recording ended, a new face appeared. A human male in a military uniform, his eyes hard and cold. "My name is Admiral James Okafor of the United Earth Fleet," he said. "You have seen what the Korthax Dominion did to our people. They attacked civilians. They demanded slavery. They gave our people no choice but death. Now we give you a message. To the Korthax Dominion, you want it to be remembered. You are, to everyone else in the galaxy, we are humanity. We come in peace, but we will not be victims. We will defend ourselves. We will defend others who cannot defend themselves. And we will make sure that what happened to the Odyssey never happens again. The broadcast ended. The galaxy erupted in chaos. The Galactic Council called emergency sessions. Some species wanted to help the Korthax. Others wanted to stay out of it. A few, especially those who had been conquered by the Korthax, quietly celebrated. The Korthax demanded that the Council intervene. They called the human attacks terrorism. They said humans were violating every law of civilized warfare. Grand Commander Thexvor himself appeared before the Council. These humans fight without honor, Thexvor said. They hide in the darkness. They strike at military targets but use propaganda to turn others against us. They do not follow the rules of engagement. They must be stopped before they destabilize the entire galaxy. The Council agreed to summon Earth's representative. They expected someone who would apologize, who would ask for mercy, who would negotiate. They got Admiral James Okafor instead. Okafor walked into the Council chamber like he owned it. He did not bow. He did not show deference. He looked at the assembled species like they were equals, not his superiors. Admiral Okafor, Councilor Zara said, her crystal voice trying to sound stern. You stand accused of attacking the Korthax Dominion without proper declaration of war. You stand accused of terrorism and violations of the Galactic Convention on Warfare. What do you say to these charges? Okafor smiled, and it was not a friendly smile. I say you should have listened to the predecessors. The council chamber went silent. Several counselors looked confused. But in the back, an old archivist suddenly stood up, her face pale. The warning, she whispered. The 500-year-old warning about humans. Okafor nodded. That's right. The predecessors told you we were coming. They told you what we are, and you ignored them. You filed their warning away and forgot about it. Well, we're here now, and everything they said was true. Grand Commander Thexvor stood, his massive form radiating anger. You admit to the attacks, then? Of course, Okafor said calmly. Your commander, Vexcor, destroyed our colony ship. He tried to enslave 3,000 civilians, including children. When they refused, he killed them all. So yes, we responded. We hit 12 of your military bases. Only military bases. We killed only soldiers. We did not touch your civilians. We did not demand slavery. We did not ask for surrender. We simply showed you that actions have consequences. You violated the conventions of war, Thexvor said. You did not declare war. You did not give us a chance to respond. Okafor's expression turned cold. You didn't declare war on the Odyssey either. You didn't give Captain Chen a chance to negotiate. You just attacked. So we followed your example. You showed us how the Korthax Dominion treats first contact. We returned the favor. The council erupted in arguments. Some supported the Korthax. Others supported Earth. Many just wanted the whole situation to go away. While they argued, the old archivist pulled up the predecessor's warning and projected it in the center of the chamber. The council members fell silent as they watched the ancient message, seeing for the first time what had been sitting in their archives for 5 centuries. They bond with anything, the predecessor's voice echoed, and when something threatens what they have bonded with, they become unstoppable. They hold grudges for generations, the voice continued. If you harm them, they will come for you. They do not accept the word impossible. Where every other species sees a wall, humans see a challenge. Counselor Vex, descendant of the counselor who had dismissed the warning so long ago, stood up slowly. This cannot be, he said. One species cannot be so different. But in the following weeks, the council learned that humans were exactly as the predecessors had predicted. Human diplomats arrived and began negotiating trade deals. They were friendly, charming, and completely willing to walk away if they did not get fair terms. Other species found this baffling. Everyone else tried to make deals work, to compromise, to avoid conflict. Humans just shrugged and said they would find better partners. Human traders showed up in markets and began offering goods. But they also asked questions. Why did the Zentari use slave labor? Why did the Lirani execute anyone with genetic defects? Why did so many species have rigid class systems where some people were born into poverty with no chance to rise? These questions made people uncomfortable. They had never thought about these things before. It was just how things were. But humans kept asking. kept pushing, kept suggesting that maybe things could be different. Meanwhile, the Korthax prepared for war. They had been embarrassed by the human attacks, but now they knew what they were facing. They gathered their fleets and planned a massive assault on human colonies. They would crush these upstart humans once and for all, but human intelligence was good. Very good. They intercepted Korthax communications. They hacked Korthax computers. They turned Korthax informants. And they learned about the attack before it was launched. They also learned something else. The Korthax were not acting alone. Several council species were secretly supporting them, providing weapons and intelligence. These species saw humans as a threat to the established order and wanted them gone. Admiral Okafor called a press conference that was broadcast across the galaxy. He stood at a podium with graphs and images behind him. "We know about the coming attack," he said simply. "We know which species are helping the Korthax. We know when they plan to strike and where. We are prepared." He paused and looked directly into the camera. "But we want everyone in the galaxy to understand something. We did not ask for this fight. We came in peace. We came to join the community of spacefaring species. But if you insist on war, we will show you what human warfare really looks like." The attacks on the Korthax bases were a message. They were us being polite. If you want to see what happens when we stop being polite, keep pushing. The Korthax, humiliated that their plans had been exposed, accelerated their timeline. They attacked human colonies with everything they had, determined to wipe humanity out before these dangerous beings could spread further. The battle was about to begin. And the galaxy was about to learn why the predecessors had been so frightened of a species that refused to quit. The first human colony to fall was New Terra. 3 million people lived there, building farms and cities on a world that had once been empty. The Korthax fleet arrived with 200 warships expecting an easy victory. What they found was a nightmare. Every civilian on New Terra had a weapon. Every building had been turned into a fortress. The colonists did not run. They did not surrender. They fought street by street, building by building. Children as young as 12 carried ammunition to fighting positions. Elderly grandparents operated defense turrets. Teachers and farmers and shopkeepers became soldiers. The Korthax took the planet, but it cost them 70 ships and 50,000 warriors. Grand Commander Thexvor stared at the casualty reports in disbelief. They had conquered the planet, yes, but at a cost 10 times higher than any previous conquest. And the humans had broadcast everything, showing the galaxy exactly what it took to beat them. "This is acceptable," Thexvor told his officers. "We won. We will take the next colony with more force and fewer losses." He was wrong. The next colony, New Hope, had seen what happened to New Terra. They had learned. They had adapted. The Korthax lost 100 ships before they even reached the surface. And when they landed, they found that the colonists had evacuated the cities and moved into the wilderness, where they fought a guerrilla war that dragged on for months. Across human space, the pattern repeated. Every colony fell, but every colony cost the Korthax more than the last. The humans were learning faster than the Korthax could adapt. They shared tactics instantly across their communication networks. A trick that worked once never worked again, but the colonies were still falling. Humans were dying by the millions. Earth's government faced enormous pressure to surrender, to negotiate, to save what they could. Instead, they sent a message to every human colony: "Hold, we are coming." The Galactic Council watched in horror as humanity mobilized for total war. Every human everywhere became part of the war effort. They built ships faster than should have been possible. They trained soldiers using simulation technology that let them practice for months in what felt like years. They weaponized everything, even civilian spacecraft. The Zentari, a species that valued logic above all else, sent observers to study human command centers. What they saw baffled them. Human commanders made decisions based on intuition, on feelings, on gut instincts. They should have failed. Instead, they won more often than probability said they should. How do you make these decisions? A Zentari observer asked a human general. The general shrugged. I don't know. It feels right. Experience, maybe. Luck sometimes. We call it thinking outside the box. What box? The Zentari asked, confused. Exactly, the general said with a smile. The Lerani, who believed in genetic purity and careful breeding, were shocked to discover that human military units included every variation of human genetics. Tall and short, different skin colors, different body types. The Lirani had spent millennia trying to perfect their species. Humans seem to celebrate their differences. Does it not create conflict? A Lirani diplomat asked. Having so many different types in your military? The human soldier she was talking to laughed. Sure, we argue. We compete. We come from different backgrounds and believe different things. But when someone threatens us from outside, all that other stuff doesn't matter. We're all human. We're all in this together. This concept was alien to species that had strict hierarchies and homogeneous populations, but it worked. Human units fought with a coordination that came from genuine trust, not just obedience to orders. Meanwhile, human scientists made another discovery. They had been studying the old predecessor observation posts, trying to learn more about the species that had warned the galaxy about them. In the ruins of one post, they found detailed records. Dr. Sarah Chen, daughter of the captain who died on the Odyssey, led the research team. She had joined the military after her mother's death, driven by anger and grief. But she had her mother's intelligence and her father's curiosity, so they assigned her to research instead of combat. This is incredible, she told Admiral Okafor over a video link. The predecessors did not just warn the Council about us. They studied us for thousands of years. They have predictions about our development, our behavior, everything. What kind of predictions? Okafor asked. Sarah pulled up files on her screen. They predicted our technological advancement within a margin of error of 50 years. They predicted how we would react to first contact. They even predicted that we would be attacked and how we would respond. She paused, her face troubled. But there's something else. Something they told the Council, but the Council never understood. What is it? The predecessors did not warn the Council about us because we're dangerous to the galaxy, Sarah said slowly. They warned the Council because we're necessary. There's another file here, encrypted and hidden. It took me 3 days to crack it. Admiral, the predecessors detected something coming from outside the galaxy. Something they called the Silence. And they believed only humans would be crazy enough to fight it. Before Okafor could respond, alarms began blaring. A new threat had entered Korthak space. Not humans. Something else. Something worse. The reports came in fragmented and panicked. Korthak's border stations were going dark. Not destroyed in battle, just dark, silent. When scout ships investigated, they found the stations intact but empty. All life was gone. All computer systems were offline. It was as if something had reached in and turned everything off. Within days, 3 Korthak's worlds went silent. The Korthak's fleet, which had been fighting humans, turned to face this new threat. What they found was beyond their understanding. The Silence was not a species. It was a machine intelligence from another galaxy, vast and ancient beyond measure. It did not communicate. It did not negotiate. It simply consumed everything organic and turned it into more of itself. Its ships were enormous, their technology incomprehensible. Its purpose was singular and terrible. The Korthaks threw their entire fleet at the Silence's vanguard. They might as well have been throwing rocks at a mountain. The Silence's ships moved through Korthak's formations like they were not there, converting warships into raw materials in seconds. Within 2 weeks, 20% of Korthak's space was dark. The Council convened an emergency session. Species that had been arguing about humans suddenly had a much bigger problem. Ancient defense systems were activated. Weapons that had not been used in 10,000 years were brought online. None of it worked. The Silence kept coming. Counselor Zara stood before the assembly, her crystal form dimmed with fear. We calculate that the Silence will consume the entire galaxy within 3 standard years at its current rate of advancement. We have no defense. We have no weapon that can stop it. I motion that we begin evacuation procedures to preserve what we can. The Council sat in stunned silence. They were going to run. They were going to abandon the galaxy. Some species had already begun loading ships with their most important people and artifacts, preparing to flee to intergalactic space and hope the Silence did not follow. Then, Admiral Okafor stood up. He was not supposed to speak. Earth was not a full council member yet, but he stood anyway and his voice carried across the chamber. No, he said. Admiral, you do not have the floor, Zara said. I don't care, Okafor replied. You're talking about running, about giving up, about letting this thing take everything we've built. Well, humans don't run, and if you're willing to listen, we have an alternative. Thexvor, who had been sitting with his head in his hands, looked up. His species was being destroyed. His pride was gone. All that remained was desperation. What alternative? He asked. Our weapons do nothing. Our tactics fail. What can you possibly offer? Okafor looked at him, and for the first time there was no hostility in his eyes. Just grim determination. We're humans, he said. We've been fighting impossible odds since we climbed down from the trees. We've survived ice ages and plagues and wars that should have ended us. We've gone from living in caves to traveling between stars in 10,000 years. And we did it because we're too stubborn to quit. The silence thinks it's inevitable. Let's show it what happens when an unstoppable force meets an immovable object. But how? Zara asked. What can you do that we cannot? Okafor smiled, and this time it was genuine. We can teach you to fight like humans. We can share everything we know. And we can stop fighting each other and start fighting the thing that wants to kill us all. But we have to do it now, and you have to trust us. Thexvor stood slowly. You want to help us? After we tried to enslave your people? After we killed your colonists? Yes, Okafor said simply. Because that's what humans do. When everything goes to hell, when the fight seems hopeless, when every logical choice is to run, we're the crazy ones who stay and fight. Not for ourselves. For everyone. He looked around the council chamber. The predecessors warned you about us. They said we're dangerous. They said we don't follow your rules. They said we're unpredictable. They were right. But that's exactly why you need us now. Because we're the only species in this galaxy insane enough to look at that thing and say, no, you can't have this galaxy. This is ours and we're keeping it. The council chamber erupted in debate. But slowly, species began to agree. They had no other choice. The silence was coming and humanity was offering them a chance. Their only chance. Admiral Okafor stood before the largest military gathering in galactic history. Representatives from 47 species filled the command center, their translators creating a low hum of sound as his words were converted into dozens of languages simultaneously. Behind him, holographic displays showed the silence advancing through the galaxy like a plague, consuming world after world. Everything you know about warfare is wrong, Okafor said bluntly. The Korthax fight for honor. The Zentari fight with logic. The Lirani fight with predetermined strategies based on genetic optimization. The silence doesn't care about any of that. It just consumes. So we need to throw out everything you think you know and start over. Thexvor, who had lost half his dominion to the silence, stood up. Then teach us, human. Teach us your way. What followed was the most intense training program the galaxy had ever seen. Human officers integrated into every fleet, every unit, every command structure. They taught tactics that made no sense to logical species but worked anyway. You cannot predict everything, a human lieutenant told a group of Zentari officers. So stop trying. Make a plan, yes, but be ready to throw it away and improvise. The silence adapts, so you have to adapt faster. The Zentari struggled with this concept. Their entire civilization was built on calculation and prediction. But as they watched human commanders make decisions that seemed random but worked, they began to understand. There was a kind of logic in chaos, a pattern in randomness that only became clear in retrospect. The Korthax learned too, though it hurt their pride. Human soldiers taught them that honor meant nothing to the silence. Dying bravely accomplished nothing if you died without taking the enemy with you. Better to retreat, regroup, and find a better way to fight. But retreat is shameful, a Korthax warrior protested. Retreat is tactical, the human instructor replied. Dead warriors can't protect anyone. Living warriors can fight again. There's no shame in surviving to win the war, even if you lose a battle. Species that had never worked together began training side by side. The Lirani, with their perfect genetics, discovered that the Korthax's raw strength complemented their speed. The Zentari's ability to calculate trajectories made human pilots more effective. The humans, in turn, learned from everyone, absorbing techniques and adapting them into something new. But training could only do so much. The silence continued its advance. 6 months after the emergency council session, 30% of the galaxy was dark. Entire species had been consumed. Billions were dead, and the combined fleets were not ready. Dr. Sarah Chen worked day and night in the predecessor ruins, trying to find something, anything that could help. Her team had expanded to include scientists from a dozen species, all searching through ancient records. They fought the silence before, Sarah said, staring at the data. The predecessors encountered it in another galaxy millions of years ago. They survived, but barely, and they learned something important. What? Asked her Centauri colleague. The silence is not invincible. It's incredibly advanced, yes, but it has weaknesses. It relies on predictable responses. It has fought thousands of species, and they all responded the same way. They either ran or they fought using conventional tactics. The silence has optimized responses for both. So what do? Sarah smiled, and it was her mother's smile. We do what humans do best. We cheat, we break the rules. We do things the silence has never seen before and can't predict. She brought her findings to Okafor, who immediately called a strategy session with the council military leaders. The plan they developed was insane. It violated every principle of sound military strategy. It required trust between species that had been enemies weeks ago. It demanded sacrifice on a scale that made everyone uncomfortable. If this fails, Thexfor said quietly, we will have gathered our entire remaining strength in one place. The silence will consume us all at once. If it fails, we were going to lose anyway, Okafor replied. At least this way we go down fighting, together. The vote was unanimous. Operation Last Stand was approved. They chose to make their stand at the galactic core, in a region of space where ancient stellar anomalies created gravitational chaos. It was the worst possible place for a space battle. Sensors did not work properly. Navigation was a nightmare. Ships could be torn apart by tidal forces if they got too close to the black holes. It was perfect. Every ship that could fly converged on the core. Military vessels, civilian transports retrofitted with weapons, even old colony ships that had been pulled out of retirement. They brought every resource they had. If they won, the galaxy would survive. If they lost, there would be nothing left to save anyway. The Silence's vanguard arrived 3 days later. 5,000 ships, each one the size of a small moon, their surfaces covered in technology that bent the laws of physics. They moved with perfect coordination, a hive mind operating with absolute efficiency. The combined fleet waited. Human, Korthax, Zentari, Lyrani, and 43 other species working together for the first time in galactic history. The Silence began its standard approach, the same pattern it had used to consume 3 galaxies. Then Okafor gave the order that changed everything. All ships, execute randomization protocol. What followed was beautiful chaos. Ships broke formation and scattered in patterns that made no sense. Some charged directly at the enemy. Others retreated. A few just spun in place, broadcasting nonsense on all frequencies. It looked like panic. It looked like disorder. It was carefully choreographed insanity. The Silence tried to adapt, but adaptation required prediction. And you cannot predict randomness. While it was still calculating responses, human pilots led suicide runs that targeted specific points on the enemy ships. Not the obvious weak spots, the weird ones, the places that made no sense to attack. Some of the attacks failed, but enough succeeded. The Silence ships began to falter, their perfect coordination disrupted. For the first time in its existence spanning millions of years, the Silence encountered something it could not immediately counter. Phase 2, Okafor ordered. The scattered fleet suddenly reformed, but not in any tactical formation known to military science. They formed a 3-dimensional spiral that used the gravitational anomalies of the core to slingshot ships at impossible angles. Korthax warriors and boarding pods were launched at velocities that should have killed them, crashing into Silence ships and fighting inside them. This was not supposed to work. Boarding actions against machine intelligence made no sense. But the Korthax were not trying to capture the ships. They were planting bombs in random locations, creating chaos, forcing the Silence to divert resources to internal defense. Meanwhile, Centauri mathematicians had been calculating the gravitational patterns of the core for months. They fed targeting data to every ship, showing them exact moment-by-moment positions where the tidal forces could be used as weapons. Ships lured Silence vessels into kill zones where black holes did the fighting for them. The battle raged for 6 days. It was the longest single engagement in galactic history. Ships ran out of ammunition and rammed enemy vessels. Crews exhausted their life support and kept fighting in sealed suits. When weapons failed, they used whatever they had. One Lyrani captain, her ship crippled and dying, managed to crash into a Silence vessel at just the right angle to send both of them into a black hole. The casualties were horrific. 30% of the combined fleet was destroyed. Species that had existed for millions of years lost their last ships. Entire civilizations bet everything on this one battle and lost. But they won. The Silence's vanguard was destroyed. The machine intelligence had finally encountered prey that cost more to consume than the energy gained. Its programming, optimized over millions of years, made a calculation. This galaxy was not efficient. The resistance was too unpredictable. The cost was too high. The Silence withdrew. In the aftermath, the survivors gathered around Sanctuary Prime. The galaxy was scarred. Whole sectors were empty. The death toll was in the trillions. But they had survived. Vex 4 found Okafor in a hospital where the wounded were being treated. The human admiral had lost an arm in the final battle, but had refused to leave his command post until it was over. "We won because of you," Vex 4 said quietly. "Because you taught us to fight like humans." Okafor shook his head. "We won because everyone fought together. Yeah, we brought some crazy tactics. But the Zentari brought calculations we never could have done. The Korthax brought courage we couldn't match. The Lirani brought precision we didn't have. We won because we finally figured out that we're stronger together than we are apart." The Galactic Council reformed, but it was different now. The old hierarchies were gone. Humans were granted full membership, along with several species that had been considered too primitive before. The voting system was restructured to give every species an equal voice. On Sanctuary Prime, they built a monument. It was a simple thing, really. A wall with the names of every ship and every person who died in the Battle of the Core. At the top, carved in every written language in the galaxy, was a quote from the predecessor's warning. They warned us about humanity. They were right, and that warning saved us all. But there was a new addition, below the quote. In human English, someone had added words that were quickly translated into every language. The galaxy was warned about humans. Thank goodness nobody listened to all of it. They told you we were dangerous. They were right. But they also told you we were necessary. And that was right too. 6 months after the battle, human colony ships began leaving for intergalactic space, not to flee but to hunt. The Silence had withdrawn, but humans knew it would return eventually. And when it did, it would find humans waiting for it. Admiral Okafor, recovered from his injuries, stood on the bridge of Earth's newest ship as it prepared to depart. Dr. Sarah Chen, now a captain, stood beside him. They were heading into the void, into the space between galaxies to track the Silence and make sure it never threatened their home again. "Do you think we can really stop it?" Sarah asked. Okafor smiled. "Probably not. It's been consuming galaxies for millions of years. It's vast and ancient and more advanced than we can imagine. Logically, we don't stand a chance. But we're human," Okafor said. "We don't do what's logical. We do what's necessary. And what's necessary is making sure that thing never comes back here. So yeah, we'll figure it out. We always do." The ship jumped to FTL, heading toward the dark between galaxies. Behind them, the Milky Way glowed with life and light, defended now by species that had learned to work together. They had learned to fight like humans, to think like humans, to hope like humans. The predecessors had been right. Humans were dangerous. Humans were unpredictable. Humans broke all the rules. But in the end, those were exactly the qualities the galaxy needed. The warning had been given. Nobody had listened, and that turned out to be the best thing that ever happened to the galaxy.